With kids around, me time runs out fast. Don't waste valuable child-free minutes on a drink run. Instead, get Drizzly, the #1 app for alcohol delivery. Drizzly has the largest selection of beer, wine, and spirits delivered in under 60 minutes. Get date night rolling before your parents bring them back. How about a living room sip and paint? They'll never know you stole their crayons. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC with Matt Frei.
Okay, well, we've talked about domestic politics. We've talked about some international politics. We've just had that very powerful 45 minutes on bereavement. It's time to turn to the United States. And our dear old Simon Marks, who has got up early for us in Washington to take us through the events this week in America, from heavy weather to heavy politics. Simon, good morning.
Matt. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks.
It's been a while. We haven't spoken for ages.
Yes, I know. I've been on the road, but it's lovely to be back.
There's nothing like the road, and it's nothing like having you on air. So take it away, Simon.
Well, we're on the brink of a government shutdown. Yes, another one. It beggars belief, doesn't it? There's going to be some fresh activity in the next few hours up on Capitol Hill in what I suspect will be a futile effort to head it off. But the way things stand, about 15 hours at midnight tonight here on the East Coast, the US government will shut down for an unknown period of time because Republicans are unable among themselves to agree a compromise over Joe Biden's $6.9 trillion, with a T, budget proposal. The Republicans say that he's spending money like a drunken sailor. They want to gut it. They particularly want to shred it of funding for Ukraine. But the Republicans are split. They've got a very small majority in the House of Representatives, just 4 seats, and the MAGA supporters, Make America Great Again supporters of Donald Trump, are determined not just to hold the line on shredding many of Joe Biden's public spending plans, but they're also clearly now engaged in an uprising against their own leader, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, who has been absolutely unable to forge any kind of compromise over the last few days. So we're going to see millions of government workers furloughed, the national parks, many of them, the museums are going to shut down. America's poorest citizens may, depending on how long this thing lasts, find it difficult to secure their benefits, like the food stamps that they're given by the government to use to pay for groceries and the basic things they need to sustain themselves. And of course, the knock-on effect for the economy here and internationally will be negative, because we're going to see a slowdown in economic activity, particularly economic activity that the government here funds. The last government shutdown lasted over a month. Let's see how long Republicans dig in their heels. But if we have to wait for a new Speaker of the House of Representatives to emerge before we find a way out of this thicket, we are in for quite a long few gloomy weeks here, I suspect. And that, of course, sends a dreadful message to the rest of the world.
And who are the voters in America going to blame for all this?
Well, Republicans obviously are calculating, at least Republicans in the House of Representatives are calculating, that they won't be blamed for all of this. But Republicans in the Senate, the more sort of mature, seasoned Republicans, are urging their colleagues in the other House to find a compromise. But look, throughout this week, we have seen a Republican Party redefining itself, not just in terms of, obviously, as we've discussed before, this is a party that is completely slipped from its ideological moorings. But earlier in the week, the extraordinary spectacle on Wednesday night of the second televised debate in the race for the Republican Party's presidential nomination being held at the Ronald Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California, in which barely any of the 7 figures on the stage was even attempting to claim the mantle of Ronald Reagan. This party has slipped so far to the right, Ronald Reagan probably would be rejected for membership at this point, were he
for being too left-wing.
Yeah, absolutely. Far and away too left-wing. And Donald Trump, as you know, wasn't there. He skipped the debate. He's 40 points clear of his rivals. And just take a listen.
40 points? Hang on a second.
40 points clear. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, my goodness gracious. It gets bigger and bigger. Every time he's indicted, there's another point added.
Every time he's indicted, his political position strengthens. And just take a listen to what occurred when, the other candidates, the also-rans, gathered in what is being dubbed the kiddie pool of American politics. Take a listen to some of the lowlights and a couple of the highlights from the debate.
I cut taxes, and he said, I loaded up our
You wanted a gas tax increase, and then you wanted
Ladies and gentlemen, we do not intend to go ahead like this. In fact,
Donald Trump should be here to answer for that, but he's not. And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching, okay? And you're not here tonight, not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
All right.
What you've got, I honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say. Because I can't believe that here you've got a TikTok situation.
Where's Joe Biden? He's completely missing in action from leadership. And you know who else is missing in action? Donald Trump is missing in action. He should be on this stage tonight. He owes it to you to defend his record where they added $7.8 trillion to the debt. That set the stage for the inflation that we have.
Here's the challenge, though. Black families survived slavery. We survived poll taxes and literacy tests. We survived discrimination being woven into the laws of our country. What was hard to survive was Johnson's Great Society, where they decided to put money, where they decided to take the black father out of the household to get a check in the mail, and you can now measure that in unemployment, in crime, in devastation.
Well, that sounded like fun. Simon, did I hear the voice of, not the last one, but the previous one, of Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, discovering what might be called a spine when it comes to opposition to Donald Trump?
Yes, I mean, barely.
A little spine.
A very flexible spine. One of the more extraordinary facets of this debate, Matt, was that at no point during the 2 hours did any of the candidates, nor indeed any of the Fox News moderators, when talk turned to Donald Trump, raise the fact that the former president is facing 91 criminal charges in various jurisdictions all over the country that could see him jailed for decades. Apparently that was not something worthy even of being mentioned during the course of this debate. And I don't think it's very likely, the way things currently stand, that any of those people you just heard from, Chris Christie, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis or Tim Scott, is going to be any stronger in their challenge against Donald Trump in the week ahead than they were before that debate took place.
Okay, really briefly on Trump, sum up for us briefly, what can derail the Trump run for the nomination?
Well, the Grim Reaper, I suppose, could derail the Trump struggle for the nomination. But, at this point, it is very unclear what else could tip the apple cart over. Proving that a broken clock is right twice a day, Donald Trump dubbed that debate boring and inconsequential and immediately demanded that the Republican National Committee should scrub further debates and simply anoint him the party's standard bearer. There is no sign of any kind of locomotive capable of derailing him.
Okay, and briefly, sadly, Dianne Feinstein, the veteran California senator, who, of course, said that she would run again for the Senate. And many people said, well, hang on a minute, you're 90, you're old, you sound very frail. And they used that perhaps as an excuse to prevail upon Joe Biden to step down. She has died this morning, we heard, so that will not be an issue anymore. But just tell us about the significance of that briefly.
Well, she was an extraordinary political figure, so, one has to pay tribute. She became the first female senator from California in 1992. Before that, she was the mayor of San Francisco. She had literally cradled the dying Harvey Milk, who was an assistant to the mayor, backing gay rights in San Francisco when he was assassinated during her time in the city. city. She was a centrist within the Democratic Party, supportive of the death penalty, but also very supportive of LGBTQ rights, one of the first politicians in the country to see the real political power of the lesbian and gay community. But she stuck around in Washington far too long. She advocated and backed an assault weapons ban on Capitol Hill. She was a big backer of environmental laws, but she stayed around too long, and at the age of 90, her presence in Washington in the last few months has only underscored the sense that America's got a gerontocracy problem, and that's symbolized in very large measure by Joe Biden.
Okay. We're going to leave it there. Simon Marks, the ever young Simon Marks, thank you very much for coming on the program.
When it comes to business travel in Orlando, it's never business as usual. Sure, I could go on for days about all the incredible places to hold meetings, or the Michelin dining, or the breadth of industries that call it home. But when it's time for your business to make the extraordinary happen, Albert Monero of Limitless Solutions said it best. Orlando is an incredible place for innovation. So dive in and see what's happening in Orlando, where the possibilities for business travel are unbelievably real. Learn more at orlandoforbusiness.com.